Sony has just created one of the worst and most soulless superhero movies of all time in Madam Web. Here's all the reasons I think it absolutely sucks. And we're going to start at the top with the biggest problem, which is just the idea of this movie in the first place, because not only is this barely even a Spider-Man-esque film, it's barely even considered a superhero movie in my opinion. So when this movie starts, we spend a couple minutes with Cassandra Webb's mom and how she was studying spiders in the Amazon. Everybody knows that line. And then we cut to 2003 New York and we see Cassandra Webb, which is Dakota Johnson's character of Madam Web, just driving around being this like paramedic driving an ambulance. So we get like 20 minutes of the complete nonsense that we have in front of every superhero movie nowadays of them just living their regular boring lives, and then oh my god, she finally gets her powers about 25 minutes into the movie. And while you would think the movie's now going to kick into high gear, the film actually never gets started regardless of how she now has her powers, because she's basically not a superhero for 95% of this film. I'm not exaggerating. The only superpower that you get to see in this superhero film is her either seeing anywhere between 5 seconds into the future to like 5 minutes into the future and then just immediately changing course and just avoiding the outcome. And I am personally glad this movie is flopping, because this just shows that Sony has absolutely no clue what makes people like both superhero movies and Spider-Man movies. I think they can throw any slop that's similar at us and we'll just eat it up. And the worst part about all this from Sony is that in the trailers, they blatantly show Sydney Sweeney and the other two girls in their spider suits doing Spider-Man-like things, having these action sequences, and they're nowhere to be seen in the film besides those sequences you see in the trailer. But let's get to the next point, which is that the characters in this movie almost all suck. Now, I will say Dakota Johnson as Cassandra Webb, I actually think is pretty good in some scenes. Now, yes, there are some scenes where she's just sleepwalking through and just cannot be bothered. But like, I legitimately thought while watching this movie, if she was just given like a decent script or an okay superhero movie, I feel like she could be an actually really cool and interesting character. But this movie is just not that. But from there, the characters just get worse and worse. Like Uncle Ben being in this movie with Mary Parker, quote unquote, it literally just exists to wink at the audience and say, hey, we don't have any Spider-Man in this movie that everybody wants to see, but we have Uncle Ben and you're gonna love it. And nobody does. His lines are so offensively bad in this film, it's painful. Then we also have the three Spider-Women, or at least that's what you think they would be watching the trailer and knowing the characters from the comics. You'd be like, oh, they're gonna actually turn into these super-powered spider people. But spoiler alert, it literally does not happen in this movie. They're just regular people the entire time. All of them are just so underwritten and have nothing to do. The only time you see them actually become the Spider-Woman is through visions that last about 1 minute of the entire runtime of the film. That's it. Otherwise, they're just regular people. But easily the worst character of the entire movie is the villain Ezekiel. He ruins every single scene he's in. First of all, he's like a spider-powered villain, which you think would be cool. Like, oh, we like Venom. He's like an anti-Spider-Man. But no, this guy feels like an SNL parody of a Spider-Man villain. And he's not just bad like the way the Marvel's villain was just forgettable. Like, yes, this guy is forgettable, but every time he's on screen, you're actually reminded how terrible he is. Like, his voice he's doing in this is just weird. His entire performance is just off. He's using some like Dark Knight technology to hack into just everything in New York City in the year 2003 and just easily find these people that he saw in a dream because he can perfectly remake their faces. It's just so unbelievably dumb and ruins it. And let me know if I saw this wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's a moment in the movie where he literally jumps into an ambulance that wasn't going to hit him just because. Now, I could rag on the characters forever, but I'm going to get to the next point, which is the editing in this film is atrocious, but not in the regular way where it's just like sloppy cuts. It's like they intentionally made the editing bad when Madam Web is seeing visions of the future and kind of rewinding in time back to current day, because they thought it was going to be like a cool effect, but whatever they are doing, it looks so terrible. You can barely tell what's going on the screen, and it just becomes unwatchable during these sequences. It's just so offensively bad. Now, I have been absolutely ragging on this movie, so I do want to say I do think there's some redeeming qualities, and it's that it does fall into the camp of being so bad, it's kind of entertaining at moments. Like, there's lines of dialogue that just come out so unnaturally that I actually laughed out loud, and the final scene in the movie, I won't spoil it, but just know it is so ridiculously dumb. Again, I laughed out loud in the theater of me and one other person. And all throughout this movie, I felt like if we actually just started this film, like I said, maybe you get like 10 minutes of origin of Madam Web, and then she's at her full potential, it could have actually been an interesting story if it was made by just a different group of people and a different studio. Sadly, that's not the reality, and Sony's just going to keep pumping out these absolutely lifeless adaptations of comics. But if you want to see me predict what movies are going to flop or succeed at the box office this year, click the video right here and just know I did predict Madam Web to flop.